different locations inside the mall could clearly hear gunshots. We did interview a woman who had a chilling account about an hour and a half ago. Her name was Amber. She says she was walking into the mall at the Macy's entrance when she saw what looked like to her a teenager with a white hockey mask, a camouflage shirt, a bulletproof vest walking past her car right into the mall. She says he stared at her and walked into the mall. About a minute passed, people started screaming and coming out of the mall. So if her account is right, he may have entered through the Macy's and then worked his way through the mall from there, because we've heard from people on the opposite side of the mall at Sears that they also heard gunshots, and from JCPenney's as well.
When this all unfolded about 3:30 this afternoon, we heard it come down as a suspect perhaps carrying a automatic weapon, walking through with camouflage and maybe with a mask on of some sort. And our first reaction, because these things don't happen often in cities throughout America, that perhaps it was a drill. But unfortunately, it was not a drill. And we do have two innocent bystanders who've been killed, another who is now injured in the hospital. We can also tell you there's still more questions to be answered. As you can imagine, just the wild assembly of folks out there trying to gather all the information they possibly can, get us all the latest. By 6:30 tonight, they plan another news conference to update what is happening. But a lot of folks at home, hopefully at this point, have been able to touch base with their loved ones who they've found out hopefully have not been hurt.
What we hope at this point is that that number, the two deceased plus the shooter and one person with traumatic injuries, what we're hoping is that that number doesn't go up. We have no idea. Like Steve said, 100 officers, city, state, local, federal teams going through the mall right now with the fine-tooth comb, trying to find anyone who may still be hiding, anyone who may be injured. We hope that they only find someone hiding and not any more injuries at this point.
And you can only put yourself in that situation, although how difficult would that be, because we were not there. But you're shopping on a Tuesday afternoon for your loved ones, or perhaps you work there at the mall, and this happens. And some of the original accounts were that they thought it was balloons popping, because you would assume that it was a festive time out at the mall. Why would you ever think that someone had opened fire? But again, we do have two people have been killed out there and one person injured, and the shooter also has been killed.
Let's go to Brian Wood in the newsroom with an update. What can you tell us, Brian?
A couple of random things here, but important nonetheless. We have reports that police have now opened the highway ramp leading from Interstate 205 to the Clackamas town center. But TriMet at this point says it has no idea when bus service near the mall will resume. It's clearly been disrupted. I'm following some of the tweets and people concerned about their buses. The bus lines are long. I'll read them quickly. 28, 29, 30, 31, 71, 72, 79, 152, 155, and 156. I'm out of breath. Those are all being affected because of what's going on at Clackamas Town Center. A couple of other things. We heard notes early on in this coverage about police saying, please stay off your cell phone if you're down near Clackamas Town Center, that they need that trunk space, if you will, on the phone lines to get their information to officers. And here it is, cell phone service near Clackamas Mall is overwhelmed. That's according to Clackamas County Sheriff's Office. And finally, for you, this is a Facebook post by a gentleman named Weston, and I'm going to read it here. He says, today me and my family were getting my daughter's picture taken with Santa at the Clackamas Town Center. My daughter was on Santa's lap when we heard shots fired directly above us in the food court. I grabbed my baby and told my wife to run, and we made it out fine. He goes on to talk about issues about gun control. That's another thing you're seeing a lot on social media. That debate is starting. Our focus tonight clearly on the wounded, clearly on those who died in this tragic incident this afternoon at Clackamas Town Center. Back to you.
That would certainly be your first instinct. Thank you, Brian, very much. If you had your child out there, you know, Angelica, you heard what we eventually found out were gunshots, you would take off running.
Forget it. He just, in one anecdote on Twitter right now, a man says a stranger picked up my pregnant wife and I carried her out of the mall while I grabbed our daughter. Can you imagine? And Shelley told us a story about a woman who says they heard gunshots, people ran, and then all you could hear was silence and Christmas music playing. I mean, it's just horrifying. Well,
sheer panic. And the original reports came in, said people were running for their lives out of the mall. Let's go to Dan Katsuto now, standing by outside Clackamas Town Center right now. What do you have for us, Dan?
Well, you've really nailed the description when you're talking about people who were just shopping for the holidays and just totally taken by shock, surprise. I don't even know what words you could use to say what happens. You can see the terror on people's faces as they were leaving the mall. We've been here for, let's see, almost over an hour now at least, and you could just see as all these cars are streaming out, all these people keep leaving. Many of the store employees who are still in their uniforms. They were crying when they came out of the store. Some people were holding each other and just trying to comfort each other about what happened and how horrible it was. I want to show you one interview that I did about 45 minutes ago with a young woman who was just shopping, and her name is Allie, and listen to what she has to say.
We heard a gunshot behind that door, so we thought he had followed us down there, and then we let her in, and she said that she saw a guy laying there dead with a gun beside him, and then we heard a gunshot before that, so we didn't know what was going on or if he was right outside our door or what. I don't know. And then we just stayed there.
Allie was really shaken up when she was talking to us. She was just a customer who was outside of the Forever 21 store, and that was right near where she and the other customer say they saw that body. We don't know if that was the shooter or not. That hasn't been confirmed, but there was a body at some point that some people saw outside of the Forever 21 store. The other surreal part of all this is that there's so many people just leaving here who were trapped inside stores. Was a shooter amongst the customers or the employees in the back room of the store? Because you got to think, we've seen this in movies where somebody barges in and robs a bank, shoots up a public place, and then ditches the gun and pretends to be a customer to try to leave without trace and blend in. So that was clearly on the law enforcement mind as they were going store by store trying to free the customers and the employees who were taking cover in those stores, trying to make sure that there wasn't a shooter amongst them. And what they were doing is they told me that the law enforcement officers who came store by store would ask one of the employees who was in uniform privately, do you think any of the people who are secure in the store here in the back with you could possibly be a bad guy, could be a shooter? And once the employee said, no, everybody here was a customer, they were in my store at the time when this happened, that's when law enforcement escorted them out. Sometimes law enforcement actually had a gun and asked the employees and the customers in the store to come out with their hands up, because they were still very worried that there was that possibility that there was somebody that could be hiding amongst the customers. Just a really chilling scene here as we've seen all these cars streaming out, an endless stream of people leaving with horrible, chilling stories about how this shopping day will certainly be a day they will absolutely never forget. Back to you guys.
The story is exploding, as you mentioned, Dan, on social media, trending worldwide on Twitter right now. Everybody talking about Clackamas Town Center, unfortunately, for this particular reason right now. Thank you, Dan. We'll talk to you very soon. We can also point out that earlier authorities told us that one person had received traumatic injuries in this shooting. We have now confirmed, OHSU tells us they do have one patient there that was involved in the shooting at Clackamas Town Center.
We heard from Sergeant James Rhodes a couple minutes ago, and he was asking any witnesses to call the Clackamas County Sheriff's Office. The number is 503-655-8211. It's on your screen right there. He said you can call that number, or you can stop by the Sheriff's Department on Sunnyside Boulevard. They are trying to gather so much information right now. They need all these eyewitness accounts.
As we try and put together all these accounts from different folks who were in the mall at the time who have called us, this is what we understand has been happening, that apparently the shooter started, it appears to us anyway, all this not confirmed, started at one end of the mall and started shooting, making his way to the other end of the mall. If you look at this particular map right here, you can see J.C. Penney on one end and Sears at the other and Macy's right in between. We have had reports from folks inside that mall who have heard or seen the shooter at J.C. Penney, around Macy's, and also around Sears and the food court as well. So you can just imagine the number of people who were involved in that, several thousand people shopping at the time when this whole thing unfolded.
Yeah, we've heard that one of the victims who was killed was working a kiosk and a woman says she was inside. It was right outside of the Forever 21. So we're not exactly sure at what point that happened. We've heard from several witnesses that there were a couple pops. Everyone keeps describing it as a balloon sound. It sounded like a balloon was popping, and then they waited. People are also saying they heard like a crashing noise. We don't know if that's people running, and then more gunshots. And people lost track at that point. There were so many gunshots.
2 people dead besides the shooter. 1 person transported. Traumatic injuries, we're told. They're not saying at this point, giving us information about the shooter. The initial reports were that, in fact, the first report we received from an eyewitness was that it appeared to be a teenager wearing a hockey mask, a white hockey mask, carrying some sort of assault rifle. I have not confirmed any of that. Also wearing camouflage, we were told. One other thing I want to add, Angelica, and I apologize if I'm repeating because it is worth repeating. You mentioned the number that folks should call, which is 503-655-8211. They also say that if you want to drop by the Clackamas County Sheriff's Office and give them your eyewitness account, you can do that as well, and that's at 9101 Southeast Sunnyside Boulevard there in Clackamas. So if you don't want to call, perhaps the lines are tied up, you can go to the Clackamas County Sheriff's Office on Sunnyside Boulevard.
We know that 205 has reopened. It was closed for a short time as they were blocking traffic there. All the entrances to the mall are closed. They've evacuated hundreds of people over the past several hours. And there are teams of police officers, federal, state, local law enforcement officers combing the mall right now, checking all the dressing rooms we can imagine, checking the back rooms just to see if there are groups of people still hiding. And hopefully they won't find any more wounded shoppers or employees. That's another thing that we're looking for.
This story very much still unfolding, still waiting for authorities to hold another news conference coming up at about 6:30 tonight. In the meantime, let's go to KATU's Tom Jensen, who's still on the scene out there talking to lots of folks. Go ahead, Tommy.
I don't know if anybody's mentioned this yet, but this does seem surreal and eerily similar, doesn't it, to what happened in Colorado not too long ago. A young man with a disguise walking into a theater that time, and a lot of the victims here were right outside the theater, apparently, in the food court. And we talked, Angelica was saying that a lot of people reported hearing what sounded like maybe balloons popping. And Melanie just talked to a young woman who we heard from a couple of minutes ago. Her mom was inside the mall, and her mom said that she heard the same thing.
Well, I'm very shaken up. I don't know if I want to come back to work, but I've lived here for almost my whole life, and I've never seen anything like this.
Right after that, she said that her mom told her that after she heard that pow, 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 she did see the mall Santa Claus drop to his knees. We're not sure if he was hit or if he was dropping to his knees for cover. And then she told us about how one of her family friends, her sister's friend, actually was shot. We believe she is the girl who was taken to OHSU. She was hit in the side, she told us, and she said that she was told that she will be okay. Steve and Angelica?
All right, Tommy, thank you very much. I've been here a long time.